What if I told you that pleasure, this thing we all chase, crave, and even shape our lives around, is actually the very thing enslaving you? Sounds dramatic, right? But think about it. How much of your life is designed around avoiding discomfort and maximizing pleasure? From the food you eat, to the shows you binge, to the social media you scroll endlessly, to the relationships you choose not because they're meaningful, but because they're easy. You see, we live in a world where pleasure is everywhere. It's in our pockets, on our screens, in our food, in our fantasies. And yet, despite being surrounded by comfort, we're more anxious, more lost, more disconnected than ever. So here's the philosophical dilemma we're going to unravel. If pleasure is supposed to make us happy, why do we feel so empty? That's what this video is about. I'm not here to demonize pleasure. I'm not telling you to become a monk or give up all worldly desire. I'm telling you something deeper, something more dangerous. When pleasure becomes your compass, you lose your direction. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you delayed gratification for something truly meaningful? When was the last time you chose pain intentionally because it aligned with your values? If that feels foreign or even threatening, you're not alone. We've been conditioned to believe that discomfort is failure, that boredom is a problem, that silence is awkward, that hard things aren't worth it. But here's the terrifying truth. When your life is ruled by the pursuit of pleasure, you're not free. You're addicted. Let's break this down. Pleasure isn't the enemy.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But when pleasure becomes the goal, rather than a byproduct of a meaningful life, it turns into a trap. It hijacks your mind, your schedule, your relationships, your soul. You start chasing quick dopamine hits instead of long-term fulfillment. You choose what feels good now over what's good for you later. You avoid the hard conversations, the deep work, the uncomfortable truths, because they don't feel nice. But life, real life, isn't about feeling nice. It's about becoming real. Let's go ancient for a moment. The philosopher Epicurus, the guy everyone thinks was all about pleasure, actually warned against this. He said the highest form of pleasure isn't indulgence. It's the absence of pain, the peace that comes from a life of simplicity, wisdom, and self-control. Now compare that to today. We're not seeking peace. We're chasing stimulation, constantly. We think pleasure will fill us, but it only distracts us. And the more we consume, the more numb we become. Which brings me to the first sign your life is ruled by the pursuit of pleasure. You're always escaping. You can't sit still. You can't be alone with your thoughts. You reach for your phone the second there's silence. You eat when you're not hungry. You binge when you're not bored. You scroll when you're not even interested anymore. You're not choosing pleasure. You're avoiding presence. And that's the scariest part, because when we escape the moment, we also escape ourselves. We stop being curious. We stop being honest. We stop being alive. Here's a question I want you to sit with. What are you really running from when you chase pleasure? Is it fear? Shame? Loneliness? Is it the terrifying thought that your life might lack purpose? This is what pleasure hides. It lets us ignore the existential questions. It distracts us from the fact that we're mortal, that we're vulnerable, and that we're not in control. But here's the philosophical twist. Pleasure without purpose is anesthesia. It numbs the pain, but it also numbs the truth. Now, don't get me wrong, pleasure has a place. It's a beautiful part of the human experience. But when it becomes the center of your life, it begins to erode the very things that make life meaningful. Discipline, integrity, intimacy, purpose, growth. These things don't come from chasing comfort. They come from embracing challenge. So let's talk about another sign your life is ruled by pleasure. You avoid anything that requires depth. Deep work? Boring. Deep conversation? Draining. Deep self-reflection? Terrifying. You'd rather keep things light, entertaining, easy, and on the surface that looks like joy. It looks like freedom, but underneath, it's often fear. Fear of being seen, fear of feeling, fear of facing who you really are when all the distractions are gone. Let me give you a vivid metaphor. Imagine your life as a house. Every time you chase pleasure, you're painting the walls with bright colors. It looks vibrant, impressive, but the foundation is cracked. The plumbing is leaking, and you refuse to look in the basement, because the basement is where the truth lives. It's dark, it's messy, it's filled with old memories, fears, regrets, but it also contains your potential, your wisdom, your originality, your soul, and no amount of pleasure can substitute for that. Here's the paradox: the more you avoid pain, the more control it has over you. Pain that is unprocessed becomes a puppet master. It pulls your strings. It makes you chase comfort like a drug. And worst of all, it makes you forget who you really are. So let me ask you another question. When was the last time you did something deeply uncomfortable purely because it was the right thing to do? That's the test of freedom. Because true freedom isn't doing what feels good. It's doing what's true, even when it's hard. And that leads to another sign your life is ruled by pleasure. Your relationships are shallow. You don't want to inconvenience anyone. You don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to be rejected. So you keep things surface level. You entertain instead of connect. You perform instead of reveal. But real relationships require discomfort. They require honesty. They require sacrifice. And if pleasure is your God, you'll never allow yourself to risk that. You'll stay in the safe zone. The zone of casual friends and surface lovers and fake smiles. And then you'll wonder why you feel so lonely, even when you're surrounded by people. Because pleasure doesn't create connection. Presence does. And presence requires courage. Are you starting to see the pattern? When your life is ruled by pleasure, you begin to trade your depth for ease. You trade meaning for entertainment. You trade transformation for stimulation. And slowly your soul begins to starve. You look alive, but you're not living. You look happy, but you're not fulfilled. Because fulfillment doesn't come from taking more. It comes from becoming more. That's the message most people never hear. So here's what I want you to do. Right now, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what discomfort have I been avoiding that might actually set me free? That's where real life begins. Not in the endless pursuit of pleasure, but in the courageous pursuit of truth. Pleasure as a prison, how comfort culture destroys your potential without you realizing. Let's be brutally honest, we live in the most comfortable age in human history. And yet, we're the most anxious, most distracted, most directionless generation to ever walk the earth. Why? Because comfort culture has become our cage, and the bars are made of pleasure. It doesn't look like a prison. That's what makes it so dangerous. It looks like convenience. It feels like ease. It tastes like dopamine. But underneath it all is a silent erosion of the human spirit. Let's take a step back. What is comfort culture? It's the environment we live in where everything is designed to minimize friction, where pain is avoided at all costs, and pleasure is the highest good. It's the culture that tells you don't cook, order in, don't walk Uber, don't think, scroll, don't feel numb. Every system around you is engineered to keep you pacified, entertained, painless. And that would be fine if you were a machine, but you're not. You're a human being. And human beings don't grow in comfort. We grow in challenge. We grow in resistance. We grow when we stretch beyond what's easy. So let me ask you this. When did we start believing that discomfort was bad? Because it's not. Discomfort is feedback. It's the signal of growth. The birthplace of wisdom. The gym where your soul builds strength. But when your life is ruled by the pursuit of pleasure, you develop a phobia of pain. You avoid challenge like it's a threat when in reality, it's the only path to becoming who you're meant to be. Let's get raw. How many times have you quit something meaningful because it got hard? How many times have you chosen instant gratification over long-term value? How many times have you told yourself, I'll do it tomorrow because today didn't feel right? That's not laziness. That's conditioning. You've been trained by media, by marketing, by modern life to associate difficulty with failure, as if the presence of struggle means you're doing something wrong. But let me drop some truth. If you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not growing. That's not a motivational quote. That's a philosophical fact. Look at every great thinker, artist, leader, or revolutionary. They didn't become who they were by chasing comfort. They became it by confronting truth, by enduring silence. So, by wrestling with demons, by choosing purpose over pleasure again and again. And yet here we are sacrificing our potential on the altar of momentary ease. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine your life is a fire. Pleasure is the spark. It's necessary. It's beautiful. But it burns out fast. Purpose is the wood. It's slow. It's heavy. It doesn't catch quickly. But once it does, it burns for hours. It sustains you. It warms everyone around you. It starts with awareness. You have to start noticing the ways you avoid discomfort, the ways you self-soothe instead of self-confront, the moments where you choose the path of least resistance not because it's wise, but because it's familiar. Ask yourself this: what would happen if I stopped chasing what feels good and started chasing what feels true? That question will wreck you, in the best way. Because it forces you to examine everything. Why do I consume what I consume? Why do I avoid silence? Why do I fear boredom? Why do I keep doing things that feel good but leave me feeling worse? You'll start to see patterns. You'll start to realize that pleasure has become your compass. And then you get to choose. That's the power hiding in all of this. You can choose what rules your life. Most people don't. They let pleasure rule by default. But you're not most people. You're here. You're watching this. You're questioning. And that means you're dangerous. Because once you see the trap, you can escape it. You can start choosing pain that leads to growth over pleasure that leads to numbness. You can start choosing purpose over comfort. You can start choosing depth over ease. And slowly you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time, aliveness. Not the fake buzz of a dopamine hit, not the temporary thrill of escape, but the deep, steady burn of a life that matters. That's what we're really after. Not pleasure, meaning. And here's the final twist. When you start living for meaning, pleasure comes anyway. But this time, it's earned. It's real. It's sacred. It's not the thing you chase. It's the thing that chases you. Because when you live in alignment, when you do the hard things, when you become who you're meant to be, joy shows up. Not as an escape, but as a reward. So here's your challenge. For the next 24 hours, resist the easy pleasure. Don't open the app just because you're bored. Don't eat just because you're emotional. Don't avoid the silence, listen to it. And in that space, ask yourself the question that could change everything. What would my life look like if I stopped chasing pleasure and started building something sacred? That's the question comfort culture doesn't want you to ask. But you just did. And now, everything can change. The sacred alternative, how choosing purpose over pleasure awakens the real you. The sacred alternative, how choosing purpose over pleasure awakens the real you. Imagine waking up tomorrow and for the first time in years, you feel clear. Not overwhelmed, not desperate for comfort, not drowning in the noise of 1,000 distractions. Just clear. Not because you escaped pain, but because you no longer feared it. This is what happens when you stop living for pleasure and start living for purpose. Everything shifts. Your relationship with time, your relationship with pain, your relationship with yourself. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Because the world will fight you. Not with fists, but with temptations, with shortcuts, with algorithms, with urges, with whispers that say, Simon, just this once. And if you don't have something stronger to stand on, something sacred, you'll fall back into the loop. Again. So in this final part, I want to show you something most people never discover. There is a deeper, more powerful way to live. A way rooted not in the chase for pleasure, but in the pursuit of purpose. Let's start here. Purpose is not a feeling. It's a decision. It's not some magical destiny you find one day in a forest. It's not a lightning bolt. It's not a hashtag. It's a choice. A quiet, often painful choice to live aligned with what matters even when it doesn't feel good. Especially when it doesn't feel good. You don't need to feel inspired to act with integrity. You don't need to feel ready to do what's right. You don't need to feel good to be good. That's what purpose teaches you. Pleasure says, only do what feels good. Purpose says, do what's right and feeling good will follow. Here's the tragedy: we've lost our tolerance for discomfort. And with it, we've lost our sense of meaning. We want transformation without discomfort. We want love without vulnerability. We want success without sacrifice. We want wisdom without silence. But the sacred path demands all of it. Because you can't become who you're meant to be by avoiding the very things that shape you. So how do we begin? How do we shift from a pleasure-driven life to a purpose-driven one? Step 1, clarify your values. You can't live on purpose if you don't know what you stand for. So ask yourself, what do I value more than comfort? What am I willing to suffer for? What would I protect, even if it cost me everything? These aren't surface-level questions. They're soul-level. And if you don't have answers, don't panic. Sit with them. Let them burn. Because clarity doesn't always arrive with lightning. Sometimes it comes through fire. Step 2. Practice disciplined discomfort. This is how you train your soul. You choose hard things not because you hate yourself, but because you love yourself enough to grow. Wake up early. Say no to the easy temptation. Have the honest conversation. Turn off your phone. Sit in silence. Each of these is an act of resistance. Each one is a declaration, I am no longer ruled by pleasure. I am ruled by truth. And something incredible happens when you do this consistently. Your threshold for pain increases. You stop flinching. You stop avoiding. You stop running. And when you stop running, you finally face yourself. That's where purpose lives. Not in the chase, but in the stillness. Step 3. Redefine success. Most of us were taught that success is about results, money, applause, status. But those are just echoes. Real success is internal. It's alignment. It's integrity. It's when your actions match your values, even if no one sees you. Especially if no one sees you. That's sacred, because anyone can perform when it's easy. But being who you are unapologetically, consistently, courageously, that's rare. And that kind of life gives back. Pleasure takes, purpose gives, pleasure fades, purpose deepens, pleasure distracts, or purpose awakens. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine two people. Both wake up at 6 a.m. One rolls over, grabs their phone, scrolls for 30 minutes, eats a sugary breakfast, and watches YouTube for just 10 minutes before work. They're chasing pleasure. Micro hit after micro hit. The other feels the same urge to scroll but resists. They sit in silence, journal, move their body, eat with intention. Not because it's fun, but because it's aligned. Now fast forward 5 years. Who do you think is closer to their potential? Who do you think has clarity? Who do you think feels alive? That's what's at stake here. Not just your habits, but your entire life trajectory. And you don't have to be a monk. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to start noticing where pleasure has become your master and start reclaiming your authority. So let me ask you, what hard thing are you avoiding that you know would change your life if you did it every day? That's your sacred path. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not optimized for likes. But it will change you, and changing yourself intentionally, powerfully, patiently, that's the most rebellious act in a pleasure-obsessed world. Because that's when you stop being a consumer and start being a creator. And creators shape reality. They don't wait for inspiration. They become it. They don't chase trends. They embody truth. They don't serve pleasure. They serve purpose. So here's your final challenge for the next 7 days. Do one thing every day that's hard but sacred. One thing that aligns with the person you want to become. Wake up an hour earlier to write. Say no to a toxic habit. Tell someone the truth. Read instead of scroll. Feel instead of flee. Don't chase a dopamine hit. Chase alignment. Because when you start living on purpose, when you choose to suffer for something sacred, something miraculous happens. You stop feeling like a prisoner of your impulses. You stop feeling like you're drifting. You stop wondering what's wrong with me. And you start remembering who you were before the world numbed you. That's the real you, the one who doesn't need pleasure to feel alive. the one who doesn't need applause to feel worthy, the one who doesn't fear pain because they found something worth the pain. And that's the ultimate power. Because when you live for something greater than yourself, pleasure becomes a servant, not a master. And your life, it becomes a masterpiece. Not because it's easy, but because it's real. So ask yourself one final question. If I stop living for comfort, who could I become? Then go find out. You were never meant to be ruled by pleasure. You were meant to build something sacred. Now go do it, and don't look back.